Hi there, welcome to my channel. My name is Fiona and I have 3 children and I'm a yoga teacher and I specialise in pregnancy and birth. If you're pregnant at the moment and you're looking for some inspiration for your birth, please go check out the birth of my son, home birth under the tree in our garden a couple of years ago. You might really like that video. And just to say as well, because this video is about miscarriage, if you're currently pregnant and looking for inspiration, feel free to, go and find a different video if you don't feel that this is the one that you want to watch right now, because it might be a little bit difficult to watch, and just to protect yourself if that's what you feel like you need to do, and that's okay. So I'm just going to dive right in. This video is going to be about a recent pregnancy loss that I suffered. I'm just going to start from the start because I think it's so valuable to listen to stories about miscarriage, to acknowledge them and to honor those stories. So a couple of months ago, we found out we were pregnant. It was going to be our 4th child. It was a little bit of a surprise, but we were really, really delighted and really excited. The first while we kept it to ourselves, just myself and my husband. We did, however, contact a home birth midwife because we knew that, of course, if we were going to have another baby, it would definitely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, no questions, be a home birth. And so we did that, and we got a local midwife, and so had that all set up. I'd say it was about 11 weeks when we decided to tell the kids, and the reason we did that is mostly because we wanted to include them, in the excitement, but also I was feeling really sick in the first trimester, and my daughter, who's nearly 9, she was a bit worried about me, and I think she maybe thought, she did ask my husband at one point, she's like, did I have the coronavirus? So I think she was really worried. So we wanted just to alleviate those worries and to tell the kids, and we did, and we told our close family and friends as well. It was a strange first trimester because, with not seeing people at the moment, and in a way it kind of made it easier because I didn't have to pretend like I wasn't pregnant, to people. But at the same time, it was kind of lonely, and I always found during my other pregnancies, the first trimester, I would meet friends and it would kind of take my mind off the nausea and stuff. But anyway, that didn't happen this time. So I was due for my booking appointment. Then I was 13 weeks pregnant, and I had to do the initial appointment over the phone, just, answered some questions with one of the nurses, and then I was due to go in to get my first scan and bloods. I was exactly 13 weeks and really excited, but I was a bit nervous, to be honest, and I think that was strange because I was never nervous for any of the other scans. But the huge difference in this one is that I had to do it on my own. There are the regulations in the maternity services in Ireland at the moment that, you have to go and get your scan on your own, and all your visits to the hospital have to be on your own, and they're part of the restrictions, unfortunately. So that morning I got ready and I went in to the hospital, and the first thing was the scan. So I waited and went in for the scan, and that was a really, really difficult time in there because the person doing the scan was really, really lovely. We're chatting away, and then as soon as she had the scanner on my tummy, I knew something was wrong, and she just said, "I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat." And that was really, really difficult to hear. It was like I kind of wanted to pretend she didn't even say it, because it's obviously, your worst nightmare come true, that you just don't want to hear those words. And I just I think just went into shock and, kind of went into autopilot, and I just sat there like not knowing what to do, what to say. It was as if time had stopped, and that was really, really hard. She said, "Look, I'm going to go and get a second opinion from my colleague." So she left the room to get the second opinion, and I just remember sitting there going, "This isn't happening, this isn't happening. This isn't real, this isn't real. I'm going to wake up, it's like a nightmare. I'll wake up." And anyway, it was real. So the second person came in, checked, no, and there was nothing. She was able to tell me that the measurements of the baby, of the fetus, was 10 weeks and 3 days. So the heart had stopped beating a couple of weeks previous to that. And, you know, I suppose she was just gave me a little bit of time to let it sink in and gave me some information about the options that I had going forward. Now, she said also that the pregnancy sac, or the kind of with the placenta and everything, she said that's intact. So she said, I don't think you're going to miscarry, today or tomorrow, but you will miscarry the baby. And she gave me the information for, to go home and to talk to my husband, my family about it and see what we wanted to do. So she accompanied me to the door, and then I walked back to the car, and I had to drive myself home. Now at that point I did ring my husband, because I just felt I needed to tell him. He was shocked. I just wanted to tell him, I suppose, before I told the kids, because I just felt like, I just needed to tell him. So I did, and then I drove home. I think I was still on autopilot. I was still in shock, disbelief. But I drove home and went in, and we all sat down on the couch in the sitting room, and I told him that there was no heartbeat. And that was really, really hard, so my children are 8 at the time of that this happened. My children were 8, 5 and 2. And my 8-year-old just started to cry. My 5-year-old kind of was just, a bit more blunt about it. He was like, so the baby's dead. So you have a dead baby inside you. And I was like, yeah. That was, just his way of understanding. And I can, he was 5, and then my 2-year-old just crawled up to me and lifted up my top and started to breastfeed, and cuddle me, and that was exactly what I needed. He was like really intuitive, and I suppose that's, he's 2, so he doesn't really know what's going on, but I guess knew that he wanted to be with me. So we kind of just sat there and, cried together and talked about it, and it was pretty awful, but I felt it was really important to include the whole family. So I suppose the next couple of days were just kind of coming to terms with that news of the no heartbeat, and that was really hard. I obviously rang my close family, and I texted some friends who I had told, and I think it was really good that I had those people to talk to. It was really important, although there were hard phone calls and texts to do and to make. And obviously I rang my midwife as well. And I just took a few days, to come to terms with it. I found it really helpful to cuddle my dog and my kids, and we all were in, I suppose, a bit of a haze, and then we also had to decide, I suppose, what to do. I knew I didn't want to do anything straight away. I was like, I just needed the news to sink in. And then I started to read over what the different options were for, what the options were for what we could do. So those options were, there were 3 options. The first one was to do nothing and to wait until the miscarriage happens naturally. The second option was to go into hospital and to take some tablets to help, release the baby. And that option was, like they said, my husband could come with me for that, because we could have a separate room of our own. And then the third option was to get surgery, a D&C, and my husband would not be allowed in for that because of restrictions. So they were the 3 options, and we took a while to think it over. And I suppose it's important to know that we had 3 home births with our other children, and they were really, really special. Well, all births are special, but they were really supported and loving, and spiritual experiences. And I never had to pack a hospital bag or, um, do any of that in hospital. I did get scans and bloods done in hospital, but that was it. So I kind of felt like I didn't really want to go into hospital for this either, but always knowing that it's an option should I need to, just like with the other births. So I also rang and chatted to obviously my midwife to let her know, and I also rang and chatted to a good friend of mine who's a doula, who was my doula for my second baby, and I really trust her opinion on all things birth, and it was really good to talk to her about it. And after all that, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to have the most positive miscarriage possible. I know it sounds ridiculous in a way, but I just wanted it to be sacred, just like my other births were sacred. I wanted to honor the baby and, to do it in a way that was special. And for me, that was to just let it happen naturally. Now, it wasn't easy. I don't think it's easy no matter which way it happens. For the next about week, we just kind of went about our daily lives. It was weird. It was like I was in limbo. It was like I still had my baby, but I didn't. It was a really strange time, but at the same time, it was kind of like a long goodbye. We went for walks in the forest. We had nice meals together. We, just kind of went about our regular lives. Well, as irregular as can be, in lockdown, or partial lockdown it was at the time. And then I suppose I came to a point where I was just like, I don't know if I can wait. I don't know if I can do it. And when I got like that, I guess my husband was really good for reassuring me. And then finally, almost a week later, I started to have mild contractions. I was like, great, I was like ready. I was ready to say goodbye. I suppose it's important as well, during that week while I was waiting, I started to create a little birth altar for our baby. This is something I did for the other births as well. So just gathered, kind of special items, some photographs of me and my family, of some cards that people had sent, and little things from my other mother blessings that I had. I have a video on mother blessings if you're interested. It's really, I would highly recommend you do one if you're pregnant, or if you know someone who is, to organize one for them. But I actually kept the basket from my son's mother blessing, my son Saul, who was born 2 years ago. And I still had this stuff in it. I know I'm really, really nostalgic. I just didn't feel like moving the stuff. It was weird. And so I just grabbed the basket and I had everything there. And I set up a little altar in my bathroom on the windowsill. Every night I lit the candle, and I just kind of acknowledged my baby, and it was a lovely space, and I felt really calm and at peace there. So I had that ready to go, I suppose. And the other thing I did, which is a bit weird but also kind of makes sense, was that I went into kind of a nesting mode, and I cleaned the house and I cleaned the bathrooms, like scrubbed, like I would never normally do it that well. I suppose my idea was that if I end up, having a labor, well, obviously I would end up having a labor. If I ended up having a long labor, that I would be in a nice place, a nice clean, peaceful, lovely environment, because that's what I wanted to, I wanted that. And so when I did finally start to have the contractions, I'd say I had them for maybe a day, but they were very mild, very manageable. At this point, I teach pregnancy yoga. I've had 3 home births, no medication for any of them, and I find contractions really manageable. I don't mind them at all, and I was just really glad they were coming. I was glad I was ready to birth my baby. Then I remember I was just in watching some TV on my own when my waters broke, and I ran to the bathroom where I had everything set up, and I got a sitz bath, which is a tip that I can't remember, was it my midwife or my doula gave me. And I obviously told my husband. He came in, and I looked down, and the baby was there. There was no She was tiny. Now, I'm saying she because we think she was a girl, but we're not 100% sure because we couldn't tell. But I was really surprised at how small she was, how tiny, and it was just like, oh, there was no, difficulty in that. She just obviously slipped out. But so we picked her up and we put her in a little blanket that my friend had crocheted especially for me for the occasion, and we wrapped her up and we just put her in the basket beside us. And yeah, it was actually fine. It was really strange, but it was beautiful in a very sad way, And I suppose my worry after that was, the placenta, concentrating on getting that out. And it did, it came, and that was a little bit harder. But that night, we told the kids that the baby had been born and we would bury her the next day. And so we all went to bed. We were sad. It felt really strange because I guess I was so used to, being pregnant. But there was a relief there as well to know that she was out and we could honor her with a burial. And we did that the following day. My husband went and bought an evergreen cedar tree. We wanted it to be evergreen. We didn't want the leaves to ever fall off. And we buried her in our garden, quite close to the house, and we planted the tree at her burial site. And it was really, really sad, but it was really poignant and beautiful as well. And it was really important for the kids, I feel. Now, my toddler was asleep during the burial, which was probably better. And my daughter was there, and my daughter held my hand and cried. We just held our hands and cried. And my son helped with the tree, And we said our goodbyes. The kids also drew some pictures, and I did too. And I wrote a card and a letter to our baby. And, my daughter wrote a little card to her as well. And then we put them in with her and buried her in her blanket under the tree. And it's a really lovely reminder every time we go outside that she's there. We have 3 other trees in the garden. One my son was born under, and the other 2 kids have kind of claimed the other 2 trees. So it's really lovely that we have 4 trees in the garden, and one is for our baby who didn't make it. I wish that was the end of the story, but it's not, because later on that day I started to cramp really badly. I started to get lightheaded. And so I rang the hospital and we told them what had happened, and they were like, right, just come in. We will just check it out. We'll see how you are. So we were like, grand. So we were getting ready to do that, and then I started cramping really badly and getting very, very lightheaded, and had to lie down on the bed, and realized we'd have to go in really a lot quicker than I thought. So we called my mom, who was getting ready. She lives about a half an hour away. So she said, that's fine, I'll be there as soon as I can. And while we were waiting for her, we realized that we actually needed to get in as soon as possible. So we rang an ambulance and they came to collect me. While I was waiting for the ambulance, the paramedics talked my husband through things I could do to help and all that. And so we were doing them. I had a hot water bottle on my tummy. I was lying down, rubbing my tummy, stuff like that. They also said to get a hospital bag ready, which was really strange for me. I suppose I never packed a hospital bag even as a backup for any of the births. But we did that, and I totally packed the wrong things and everything. But anyway, I had to get a stretcher from the bedroom then into the ambulance. And as I was doing that, it was just the weirdest sensation to go through your own house in a stretcher. I just started to cry, like I was in the ambulance and I was bawling. And, I just kind of was thinking, this isn't supposed to happen to me or to us. But the paramedic was really, really friendly and brilliant at kind of cheering me up. We chatted all the way in then to the hospital. My mom had arrived in the meantime, and my husband was going to follow in the car, and he did. So we arrived into the hospital. I was checked over, and they were like, yeah, there's some placenta that's been retained. We're going to give you some tablets to help expel that. And I said, that's fine. So, well, first of all, they took out manually as much as they could, which was excruciating and awful. And then they gave me a COVID test, which was just like awful as well, as in it was fine, but it was just like, I was like, will you just stop prodding me? You know, like just leave me alone. That's how I felt. They gave me a room on my own with an ensuite, which I was so grateful for. And my husband was allowed in. I kind of had to ask a few of the nurses, and one of them was like, we'll let him in. She was really nice. So then I was in the hospital room with my husband for a few hours, and that was really nice. We could chat a little bit. I got to eat something, and then he had to go home to the kids. He wasn't allowed to stay overnight, and I was really worried actually as well about my toddler, who was 2 and still breastfeeding, and who I had never left at night before. And that was a huge worry and an anxiety for me that night in the hospital. I kept thinking about him, and I knew he'd be fine, but it was still, not how I planned my first night without him. So really that night was absolutely terrible. I passed the placenta kind of through the night, but at one point I went to the bathroom and I could feel that like lightheadedness coming over me, and I fainted onto the ground and banged my head on the ground in the bathroom of the hospital. But before I did that, thankfully I knew, I could tell that it was coming on, so I pulled the emergency cord, but just before I fainted. So when I kind of was coming to, I could see loads of feet around me of the nurses who had come in to check on me and pick me up and bring me back into the bed. And they did, and they checked me again and removed more of the placenta manually. They also put me on a drip and continued to check in on me. That was like the lowest point of this whole, I suppose, experience, and I really, really hated every second in the hospital. I was taken good care of, but I just didn't enjoy any aspect of it at all. I suppose it was very traumatic. And after that episode where I fainted, I was getting really tired, maybe 1 or 2 a.m., and I was really exhausted from the whole thing, and I kept kind of, almost falling asleep, but then waking myself up because I was worried I was fainting again. So I pulled the cord again, and I talked to the nurse, and I told her how I felt, and she was like, look, pull this whenever you need to, we're here. They were really kind, and eventually I went to sleep, and they did say to me that they thought that was the end of it. That was, that was the rest of the placenta. So the next morning I got a scan to check if there was any placenta remaining, and they were delighted to tell me there wasn't, and I was like, thank God. And a couple of hours later I was discharged and went home. The rest was just the healing, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and that's still ongoing. It's just, I suppose, I just felt like through the whole thing, like, this was not supposed to happen to me. We were supposed to have another child, and you just don't know when it's going to happen, I suppose. And it's very common, as so many people have been so kind and have shared their stories with me. It's so common, like 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. And yeah, I just found the experience so sad and so, I suppose, lonely. But sharing it really helped me. And I think the fact that I couldn't meet up with people and talk to them because of the restrictions made it harder. So I did share on social media, and I had lots of conversations with different people about it, and they told me their experiences, and I found that really useful and really like lovely to share that with other people. And that's why I'm doing this video, because I feel like this channel, I know it's been abandoned for a few months, but it's all about parenting and birth, and I feel it's really important to talk about the difficult things just as much as it is to talk about the amazing and brilliant parts of being a parent. And so that's the story of our miscarriage. We named our baby Aura. It's a name that we really liked for years, you know. We thought that if we had another little girl, we might call her that, and so that's her name. I suppose in time the pain will ease, and it has eased a lot. It was really awful for a while, but at the same time I'm really, really grateful. At the same time, I'm really grateful to have been Aura's mother, to be her mother, albeit for such a short time. Thank you for watching. Chat to you soon. And if you've gone through this or something similar, you're not alone. And feel the feels. They suck, but feel the feels.